and then they're going to, stand up and talk in the next one. We're not going to have people stand up and do a particular thing and come to a place or pre-write the questions. Once again, it's America, so speak up. And I know how shy all you folks in Los Angeles are. Just little retiring wallflowers that can never speak your opinion because you're afraid it'll get in the media and you won't get that part in the movie that you want. So, without that, if everybody out there is coming in, first off, can you see the stage? Thank you. Okay, so we had to have them turn all the lights up, so not everybody's in the dark here. So a little professional movie staging here because we have professionals here from Los Angeles. And I want to say that for every single person on this panel, they came at my personal invitation to say thank you so much for being here. This is the All-Star Conspiracy Panel. If you could connect their brains into a machine, you could power the solar system for a month. Also, well, maybe a couple of days. But and I also want to say, too, this is so sweet. There's this wonderful lady named Rebecca who's a big fan of my Strange Universe radio program. And I know this is ridiculous, but I had a fish that I've had for 18 years. He was 18 years old, and his name was Moby. And Moby sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago. And I talked about it on the radio, and this lovely lady actually took a picture of my fish that we had on our website and framed it with my cat Zabu and put it in this lovely frame and brought it to me. So I just want to say thank you so much for bringing me this. It's just the sweetest thing ever for anybody to ever do for me. So thank you so much. All right, we have, first off, I want to thank you so much for everybody that lives here in the city that's actually called the House of Our Mother Mary, the Ascended Queen of the Angels, which is the actual name of our city, whether you know it or not. Also, that we are the throat chakra of the world. And as the throat chakra, there are 6 planetary chakra points. Base chakra is Lhasa, Tibet. Second chakra, which is the prostate ovarian chakra, is Cairo, Egypt, to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Solar plexus chakra, which is another reason why all the crop circles are happening there, and it's the golden and silver cord of the universe or of the planet, is Stonehenge. Heart chakra is Machu Picchu in Peru. The throat chakra actually is downtown Los Angeles. If you want to go to the center of the chakra, you can actually go to the gazebo on Alvera Street. Anybody ever been there on Alvera Street? It's all owned by the Catholic Church still, that entire area, which is where they built a giant cathedral because all the Indians used to come worship at that particular spot. The Tongva and the Chumash and all those used to come there. So the Catholics just said, well, we'll just build a big church around it, and then they have to come in and we'll give them that whole Christian hoobajoo. When they come in there. The sixth chakra of the planet is Osaka, Japan. It's actually a city outside of Osaka called Tenri City. There's a huge red granite pillar, which is called the Kaudi Dai, that acts as an acupuncture needle directly into that third eye. It's another reason why the Japanese deal with televisions and radios and everything that has to do with that chakra. Also, the flag of Japan is the rising sun of consciousness, the red bindu of the third eye. But let me tell you that right now, as we're communicating from the throat chakra of Los Angeles, that the seventh chakra of the planet, the violet chakra, the apostle chakra, the Pentecostal apostolic chakra, is all of us, is the spirit of the world, if you will. And we're all interconnecting right now. So I'd like to say hello to, first off, if you can't see the front, we have a crowd of about 17,500 people here. They're all behind the cameras, so hi, everybody there. And if you're watching this in the future, gung ho fat choi to our Chinese masters. Please don't kill us for what we're about to say today. And so konnichiwa, hi, babu, shaka. So we'll have this all translated in Chinese for them if they ever see it in the future. All right, so let me introduce our fantastic panel here of people. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to make introductions for all our folks here. We're going to throw out some topics of discussion, and it's going to be kind of a bear pit, really. We're just going to I'm going to take all the microphones away, just throw one and let them fight over the microphone. What do you think? Anybody? So, so that's kind of the way we're going to do it here. Now, to introduce people on our panel, and I'll go from the farthest left-wing extreme to the farthest right-wing extreme, not politically or socially, but physically. Let me first say that this gentleman, he is the director of the Mobile Observatory Project, founder of Suspicious Observers, a group of science enthusiasts and independent researchers in excess of 200,000 people across the globe. He is, well, let me see, I've been to parties at his house where his piñatas fight back. He actually solved the mystery of who shot the deputy, which, again, who really shot the deputy, if you're a Bob Marley fan, anybody? And he's answering the question of how you can actually have some pudding if you don't eat your meat. His name is Ben Davidson. Ben Davidson at the very far end. Hey, Ben, how are you? All right, my next guest on the panel has been a fabulous personal friend for a long time. She is a remarkable, remarkable individual. She is, and I hope I get this right, but she is the great-granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States, five-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower. She has a fantastic ability to speak the English language at immensely high speed, and actually makes sense doing it. She's a global alchemist and intuitive astrologist, as opposed to astrologer, and is also obviously I told you about Dwight Eisenhower. She is on a profound mission to reveal our true origins connected with the Gaia Sophia energies, and works and liberates us from the false power structures. When it comes to girl power and that goddess energy, she doesn't just talk the talk at high speed, she walks the walk. It is, of course, Laura Eisenhower. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is truly a man who needs no introduction. All I can tell you is they named a planet after this man. Fear of spiders is called arachnophobia. Fear of tight spaces is claustrophobia. Fear of Jim Mars is just called common sense. Jim Mars has been to Mars, and that's why there's no life there. The dinosaurs became extinct because Jim Mars learned how to travel through time. They once had a Jim Mars toilet paper, but they couldn't sell it because Jim Mars doesn't take crap from anybody. The boogeyman goes to sleep every night and he checks in his closet for Jim Mars. Jim Mars is so tough. He's so tough. Jim Mars is so tough he has a bearskin rug. The bear's not dead, it's just afraid to move. That's how tough he was. Jim Mars once punched a man in the soul. That's how tough he is. Jim Mars got in a fight with Superman where the bet was that whoever lost had to wear his underpants outside his clothes. That's how tough Jim Mars is. Anybody? No? Really? Oh, God. Ladies and gentlemen, the toughest man alive. The man whose hat alone can kick anybody's ass. The man in the movie Alien vs. Predator, they remade it to make it Alien vs. Predator versus Jim Mars. The toughest man alive, Jim Mars. Thank you. He's actually the author of so many New York Times best-selling books. He has killed more Nazis than Brad Pitt over and over and over again. He'll find those Nazis, two under your bed, one in the chandelier. He is, of course, Jim Mars. Thank you so much. Jim, thanks for being here, man. All the way from Texas.
Who writes his material?
I got more if you want to hear them. No? Anyway? Okay.
I think so.
I got to tell these later on. Who do I have up next here? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman, he's the son of a minorly successful Hollywood director who barely made it in films. He is also the star of the movie The Doors, which is about a young boy who sees an accident with a bunch of Indians on the side of the road and turns to a life of sex and drugs and rock and roll. He is also the star of the movie JFK, where he plays a young boy who is traumatized and solves the mystery of who actually shot the 36th president of the United States. That is how famous he is. He is also has starred and directed and has been featured in a feature film from Greystone Park is what it's called. He joined the team of investigators for the true TV hit Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. He hosts Buzzsaw, featuring interviews with whistleblowers, styling itself as The X-Files. And he is so handsome, he has been known to make women pregnant with just a long stare. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who lives vicariously through himself. Yeah, exactly. The man whose mother has his name tattooed on her arm. The man Edgar Allan Poe quotes. The man who can identify UFOs by race, planet, species, and class. And the man who's constantly helping MacGyver out of a jam. He is, of course, the Sean Stone, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my next guest has been a good buddy of mine. He's just returned from a trip to Australia, where I think he was in a cave with a bunch of Aboriginal shaman who were blowing him up with didgeridoos, and so his soul has just been to the edge of the universe and back. You okay from that? Actually, great, because he bought me a T-shirt from somewhere in another galaxy, which is actually all he brought me is a lousy T-shirt. But he's worked with Alex Jones on InfoWars and Coast to Coast AM as a segment producer, and is an associate producer of the Alex Jones film, Obama Deception. You can't say his name without yelling and popping a vein like right there. And talking about FEMA camps. I'm going to put you all in FEMA camps in plastic boxes. Ah, no food for anybody. Alex Jones. So, anybody watch Alex Jones? I get a heart attack just listening to him on the radio. Alex Jones did a film called Obama Deception 2, which is unreleased. He later went on to projects, obviously, with Sean Stone and our next guest, Adam Kokesh, that have challenged corrupt governments and the mainstream media. Good men want to be him, bad men fear him, women want him. He is, of course, the amazing Dean Ryan. Dean, hey, buddy. All right, now this next gentleman is the real deal, is all I can say. I mean, Jim Mars might be tough, but my next guest, all I can say is most songs about love were written about him and or by him, actually. There are signs that say this is not an exit. They don't apply to him. If you were trapped with him in an elevator, you just wouldn't want to be saved. His business card says, "I'll call you." The Aztec calendar predicted his birth, and of course he once again joined the United States Marine Corps at the age of 17 and volunteered for combat in Iraq in 2004. This critical experience showed him that war is a racket and led him to deeply question his most cherished beliefs. He's inspired millions with his civil disobedience, showing how localization can overcome statism and achieve a freer world for everybody. I've got some He's So Tough left over if you want, Adam. No, anyway, he is, of course, the amazing, the stupendous Adam Kokesh, ladies and gentlemen. And last, but certainly not least, she has become a global phenomenon. She is living proof that in Los Angeles, you can actually use past lives on your resume. She is, of course, the incarnation not only of the Lady Guinevere, but she's the one that handed Merlin the sword when she popped out of a lake after swimming one day. She, of course, has formed with those experiences. She's formed the stupendous and one of the first people into internet journalism out there, the global worldwide reach of Project Camelot, which, of course, many of you have heard of. Carrie and I had the honor to actually tour Europe together, and all I can say is she was Paul and I was Ringo, is all I can say. I was just in the back going, "I'll think I saw a yellow submarine," where all these people were chasing Carrie, and she's a huge celebrity all around the world. Her fantastic documentary work on her Project Camelot website has millions of fans all across the planet. She's a documentary filmmaker and investigative journalist and a well-known radio talk show host, of course, a Project Camelot whistleblower. There have been hundreds of people that have had true stories of things behind the scene actually come out and blow the whistle on her website. Her website, Project Camelot, is the leader in the alternative media sector with a YouTube channel that has millions of viewers worldwide. She absolutely does. She is the vivacious, the very cuddly Carrie Cassidy. Carrie Cassidy, there she is. Okay, let's throw it out there. I coined a term recently on my Strange Universe radio show, and I think this is a good one. Ben Fulford has a term where he talks about the he talks about the Nazionists. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Benjamin Fulford or not. He talks about the Nazionists. Doesn't flow trippingly off the tongue. So what I came up with something called the Illuminazis. Better, huh? Better, the Illuminazis. And now what I see is that the Illuminazis are people that all think they know better. They think they know better. They think they should be the ones to actually make all the decisions for the people of the world. And they're the ones that get together in their secret conferences, which we're going to talk about today, at the Davos conference and the Bilderberg conference and all these different conferences, and which is very difficult when they get together, because I hear it's almost impossible to get fresh, homegrown, free-range, grain-fed baby. It's almost impossible to get that for their meals. However, they do have a section at Whole Foods now, I hear. So you can pick one up if you get there. So my question becomes for the entire panel, and I'll just throw this out there, and please jump in. Actually, we could kick it off with Jim Mars, because he actually threatened me backstage. So I'm giving it to Jim. Jim, in the Illuminati complex, we had all these promises of hope in 2012 of things shifting and changing. And I do see that a lot of bankers have been ganked over the past, since about 2011 or so, about 75 of these major bankers. Is there a war behind the scenes between the light and the darkness? Take it away, Jim.
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate on that monosyllabic response?
Well, it should be quite obvious to everyone that the whole world is approaching a climax. we're rushing headlong into the future, and we're heading towards a crossroads. And we're either going to go one way, in which case the people with some common sense and with some concern and with some love and with some good energy are going to try to turn things around. We're all going to go into a utopian system of justice and freedom, or we're going to go into an Orwellian 1984 techno-Nazi enslavement. But and most of y'all read my books, and you know I'm always pointing to all the bad, negative things going on, but I want to tell you something. There's really good things going on. It just doesn't get publicized because of the Illuminati control over the mass media. For example, I just saw a story about a new German car they're coming out with that runs on salt water, okay, non-polluting. You know, of course, a copy probably cost you $1 million right now, but if enough people said, hey, I want one of those, they'd get it down to a reasonable price. So
it's called the Quant.
The Quant. That's right, the Quant. I also see the fact that there's so many people here tonight, so many people here in L.A. with their minds and their hearts open. This is happening everywhere. You just don't see it on the corporate control mass media. Another thing is that they have controlled us up until recently through their tight control over finances in the world. But believe it or not, that's beginning to crumble thanks to the BRICS nation. Everybody know about the BRICS nation? That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They are creating their own World Bank. So now the Vatican, City of London, Wall Street financial control is starting to crack, and it's going to continue that way. But now the scary part of all this is that as they begin to push these Illuminatis up against the wall and starts causing cracks in their monolithic control, they're going to get more and more desperate. And this is why, if you've noticed, they are edging us towards a World War III. This is nothing new. They've done this throughout history. Every time it looks like they're going to get in real trouble, they start a war, and then it's unpatriotic to say anything against the government, the military, anything else. So it is now more than ever incumbent upon us to find out what's really going on and do not just blindly support the war machine.
Jim Morris, thank you very much. And by the way, just so as you know, the Prime Minister of France, Hollande, and Angela Merkel, who really looks like Hitler. You ever look at Angela Merkel? Put a little mustache on her. Looks a lot like Hitler. But they are now in Moscow meeting with Vladimir Putin over what's to be done with the Ukraine. And if they can't come to some kind of peace agreement over that, you have insane in the membrane John McCain actually wanting to bypass the president and send arms directly to Poroshenko in the Ukraine, which might just be a flashpoint. The same thing happened, by the way, 101 years ago with the death of the Archduke Ferdinand. So everything is very interesting. It's going to depend on what they come up with in that in this next couple of weeks or so. Ben Davidson, let me toss it down to the end. Is there a technological end game, because you've studied with all these scientists and researchers and engineers? Is there a technological end game of what they are trying to do with vaccines or chemtrails or weather modification that you might be able to speak to?
That's a multi-part question, isn't it?
Go ahead. We're a multi-part audience.
When you're in this realm of trying to figure out where the truth is, and you have allowed yourself to open your eyes and start to look at these conspiracies, like what are they doing to the skies? What are they doing to our food? Why don't we have free energy? From my perspective, coming into this as a research expert, the first thing I noticed was we have a lot of great information to go on, and nobody in the mainstream seems to take us very seriously. And I can't really tell you definitively what the end game, what the end goals of some of these projects are. But what I can tell you is that as much as people like us can recognize the theater that is put up for the rest of the world, this stuff that's just for their entertainment pretty much, the effort to control the way we think about these topics is far greater. They expend far more effort trying to control the way we think about these situations. Take, for example, weather modification. I don't know exactly how long HAARP was a secret for. I do know that in what is undoubtedly an opening of the floodgates, all of a sudden there were books, TV shows, like a good one produced by a buddy of mine over there. And then all of a sudden, there is this fervor where there is now millions of people who know and are talking and are essentially afraid and pointing the finger at something that was a state secret not too long before that. Well, the question I had was, well, okay, did they hand us HARP on a silver platter while they pointed where they actually went the other direction? You know, it's the misdirection aspect. It's the limited hangout aspect.
Do you think, Ben, do you really think they're shutting it down like they say they are?
No, absolutely not. But I do know that when something is that big of a secret and it's that important to them, and then all of a sudden there is a flood of books and TV shows, and they'll let anybody on the internet go talk about it, and Bernard Eastland's going around the country talking about it, it's not their big secret anymore. They've gone to something else.
Okay, right. I was going to say,
You know?
same thing happened with Area 51, where suddenly they opened up the floodgates, really, and everything got moved to Utah.
And so then you have this scenario where it's impossible to tell what's real. You don't know if you're 20 years behind the truth. You don't know if they've handed us our enemy on a silver platter for us to just eat up. Same thing happened with our personal privacy and Edward Snowden. What, you guys think he's really hiding out in Russia? You think the United States government can't go find any one person on this planet anytime they want to?
Well, they lost a whole plane full of people with cell phones, so...
You really think they don't know where those people are? That plane was full of people who specialized in electronic warfare.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Are we talking about the same one that...
Yeah, we're
that,
talking two airplanes.
Yeah.
Actually, one was electronic warfare, and the other
Flight
one was actually
370.
biological warfare.
Yeah, I bet all those people are safe and sound somewhere.
Oh, I see. Don't worry.
Okay, and the only place I would disagree with you, Ben, is that, again, yes, they are ignoring us, but they consist of 6 main media companies run by 6 guys. And when you look at polls in the USA Today, this is absolutely true. Polls in the USA Today, 67% of people in the USA Today, 42% believed that they would get Social Security when they turn 65, and 67% believed in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. So it's so we're on the winning side of this. Carrie, you had some comments on this?
Are you going to turn my mic on?
I have no control over that.
Who does? I want to see them.
If I had a switch here.
All right, y'all, because, like if they only turn your mic on when they allow you to talk.
Oh, Carrie, stop whining. Just
I mean-
talk.
No, I'm serious because can you hear me?
Carrie,
I
they
mean,
can hear
am
you
I
fine.
loud enough?
It's a conspiracy.
No, I mean, it's my job to look where their
It's all volunteers back there.
conspiracies
They're
are
doing their
always lurking behind the scenes, so that's what I do. Anyway, Flight 370 disappeared. And, MH370, let's see, MH17 was shot down by Putin, by the way.
Was it?
This
I
is
disagree with that.
according to Simon Parks, who I think he does have the inside track on that.
I disagree.
Fair enough. And, all I wanted to just clarify which plane was shot down, which disappeared. So I'm not sure you have a direct question for me.
No, you said you want to talk, so okay, all right.
No, I wanted to clarify that.
All right.
And then I noticed my mic wasn't working.
All right, I'm turning it off again, so there you go. By the way, has anybody seen the commercial? And I suggest you go on the internet and take a look at it. Have you seen the commercial for this super cool car, the Quant? Have you seen this thing? The thing that runs on seawater? Have you seen it? It's really cool. If you go online, it is this thing has 980 horsepower, goes from 0 to 60 in like 1.7 seconds, and it runs on seawater. My question is, unless you live in the Santa Monica Bay or the South Bay, where do you fill it up? Just thinking. I think we should create a car that runs on seawater, steam, electricity, and gas, and you call it the taint, because it taint one thing and it taint another. So, all right, I'll just let it go over your heads. That's okay. Miss Eisenhower, can you maybe give us a perspective of an entire other culture that seems to be using super technology that has to do with things that are quite possibly off-world, manipulations of time, and maybe even manipulations of the geology of planet Earth?
You're talking about this world then, right?
Okay, whichever world you want to give me, we'll talk about.
Okay, well, similar things have happened in other worlds that are potentially going to happen here as far as moving us into an artificial intelligence system and transhumanism, and that's really what the chemtrails are about, because they have nanoparticles in them, and they get into our system, and if we don't check ourselves, it's very easy to all of a sudden do things that you might not normally do, and I think everybody needs to check and see if they have implants. But what does it look like? High-level technology. In a transhumanism world, the elitists are the ones that are going to be hoarding that technology, and the whole Mars agenda is connected to a breakaway civilization in order for them to be able to do that from a different location. And they've got their underground bases too, and this connects to alternatives 1, 2, and 3. And in a world that looks like that, it's not so good for us. And I don't have any real fears about it. We're in an incredible window period right now, and spirit wins all the time, every time. And so my concept of Alternative 4 is about the power of the human spirit to unify it and to sort of knock this transhumanism out and to start to be in a world of high technology that relates to what higher dimensional beings have, which are more related to frequency, sound, and color, and technologies that are in harmony with the earth, not bent on controlling us and pushing us into a one world order system. And so, I mean, when I was young, I thought that around these days that we're in right now, we'd be, in floating cities, and it would look like a Yes album, not, just a bunch of people with weird stories and, just the truth, trying to come out of the cracks. But I know that we have the upper hand, and so when we look at two potential timelines, one being an artificial timeline and one being in sync with how Mother Earth is seeded and what our DNA does in connection with the stargates in this particular period we're in, there's a major acceleration going on. And if we can just not get distracted and bring in these incredible vibrations, we can also make contact with higher dimensional beings that can help us with advanced technology, that can help us to clean up the mess. Instead of have governments do disclosure and say, hey, we've got these great technologies and we're going to clean up this mess, when in actual fact it's from the negative ETs, and they're the ones that created the mess from the beginning and are trying to come in and act like they're going to assist us. And so
Laura,
this is a time of bifurcation and
may I ask you a
making
question?
choices.
Sorry, may I ask you a question? Recently, and I've been trying to get a hold of people who may or may not have some alternative information about Mars. There was a huge explosion on Mars, a gigantic explosion. This was just after JPL had announced that they'd found a giant pocket of methane, actually in a crater there. Any information whatsoever as to what this ginormous explosion was on Mars? Any information from anybody?
I have it in my starred folder for catching up with everything that's
Which
been
you
going
didn't
on.
bring? What? Come on.
Well, Captain K, who's a good friend of mine, who served on Mars for 17 years, did a video about this. And so he guarded about 5 Mars colonies and has, reported lately that I think one has exploded. So there's all sorts of stuff going on up there. And it's an infiltrated agenda. It used to actually...
Second question. The chemtrails, and again, the study of chemtrails going all the way back to when I first noticed them in '98 or so. And yes, if you look at the original particulates in the chemtrails, there was polymers, which is a form of glue. There were syphilis spirochetes in it, which is a mass inoculation against anthrax. But if there, and my suspicion was when they actually traced batches of the chemtrails, they traced it back to a Dr. James Baker at the University of Michigan, who was head of their nanotechnology division there. So we've been talking for about 10 years or so about there being nanotechnology particles in the chemtrails. What's the purpose? I mean, once they put these little tiny machines or robots and we breathe them in, do they have a plan at some point to activate them somehow, or
Yeah, and I think
turn everybody into Walking Dead or zombies or Republicans, or what's it doing?
Yeah. I mean, the last 2 months I've noticed people, all of a sudden shifting their energy and being under, control in a much easier way than I've ever seen. And I know that a major upgrade in what they're doing has taken place. And basically they want to form antennas in us so that they can beam all sorts of things. They can target individuals. And if you hadn't noticed already that if you're in a relationship or you're just doing your own thing, there's beams of energy. Sometimes it's difficult to sleep. You might feel all of a sudden agitated. You might feel like nervous system disturbances. So it's already happening. A lot of us are immune to mind control. It's just like annoying like mosquitoes. And a lot of people, though, are very susceptible and are walking weapons because they're weaponizing humans. And as soon as we're under mind control to the level that they want, they can pretty much get anybody to do anything. And so the ones of us that are immune are rapidly transmuting all of this and are trying to create a tipping point so that the mind control isn't going to really work, because it's a low density thing, and if we raise our frequency above it, it's a lot more difficult. And so if we can get people to get in touch with the frequencies that are coming in and take responsibility for checking themselves, then they're not going to be a weapon. And if each of us does it, then we've collapsed the agenda, basically. And
So they're going to weaponize all of us. In other words, they're going to turn all of us into Jim Mars. So yeah, there you go. All I can tell you, folks, is aluminum foil makes a really good hat. Yeah, so go ahead, go ahead.
Let me see if I can explain some of this, especially for some of you that may not be that aware of electromagnetic energy manipulation, HARP, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, what happens is they have studied, they have taken lab rats and inserted electrodes into their brain and then put them in a cage with a cat, and they freak out with fear. This registers as a frequency, and they can tell what that frequency is. So then they can say, okay, this is a frequency for fear. So then they can turn around and they can beam this frequency at you through HARP, through your TVs, through anything that has a transmitter to it, okay? Now, years ago, I was speaking to a fellow who worked on this HARP project, and he said they weren't really that happy with it because, here's what he said. He said, it only, about a third of the population, it really doesn't affect. And I think what he gave a big scientific explanation, but what it comes down to is before you can interfere with someone's thinking, they have to be thinking. And he said,
wow, is that why it doesn't work on the whole middle part of the country? It's like,
so you got a third of the population, they go up and do some menial job, they come home, drink a beer, watch TV, go to bed, get up and do it again, and they're not really thinking, so you're not really affecting them. Now, another third of the population, and this is where I think all of us would fall into, it really doesn't quite affect either, because just like Laura said, if you're balanced enough emotionally and physically and everything else, you can throw it off, I think all of us at one point wake up one morning and go, man, I don't want to go to work today. I don't feel like getting out of bed.
You become a SPOTA.
Yeah.
A SPOTA. A SPOTA to go to work today, but I don't feel like it.
But then you go, wait a minute. I got bills to pay. I got to satisfy my wife, husband, significant other, whatever. So you get up and you go about your job. Doesn't really affect you. The problem is with the last third of people who are borderline psychotic, borderline schizophrenic, and these energy things that they're throwing on us can push them over the edge. Wow. And all you have to do is consider this. When I was a kid and went to school in Texas, we brought guns. We had guns on our pickup truck. We brought guns into the school and said, hey, look at my new 22. Nobody got shot. Today, you got school shootings, you got guys getting towers and shoot people, snipe people. Why? Because they've been pushed over the edge by this very technology that we're talking about.
Psychopathic schizophrenia. You're describing the entire entertainment industry. You understand that, right? I mean, everybody else suffers from ADD. In Los Angeles, we suffer from GADD, which is getting attention deficit disorder. It's the only place you can die from being ignored. Welcome to Los Angeles. Dino, got a question for you. I'm saving Adam and Stoney for last. Dino, you ready? Was there ever a story that you wanted to do that was too hot for Alex Jones and Coast to Coast? Were there stories that they banned, that they came along and said, Dean, no?
I
heard that. We might want to talk about that. Go ahead.
Well,
Let it loose, man. I don't care.
Well, it got John B. Wells off the air.
Yeah, okay.
The great John B. Wells, who is my mentor, who's one of the greatest radio personalities in the history of radio. And I had the pleasure of working with him. And but some of the things we tried to do, I brought Professor Griff on Coast to Coast AM.
Pull the mic in. Talk right in.
Oh, excuse me.
Pull it in. There you
I brought,
Better.
is that better? Can everyone hear me? I speak softly. But no, there were some things that I wanted to do with the Illuminati and hip-hop on Coast to Coast that was kind of a little controversial, because it has to do with some of the cabals that we see, or that we even saw at the Super Bowl halftime with the Babylonian whore riding the beast.
There we go.
As they called it.
Also the number 11 tarot card, which
Yeah.
is lust, actually, in the tarot deck.
So it's a little dicey for, Clear Channel. But But, you know, there were some things that I did that never really made air. I was actually reporting for InfoWars Nightly News in 2013 on the bombing drills happening right here in L.A. weeks prior to the Boston bombings that happened that same year. So my fear that I was trying to get out that time is what we've been seeing in the East Coast a lot with all the false flag operations has yet to hit really the West Coast, and that's my biggest fear, and that's what I was trying to get out there in on the stage. So hopefully, you know, we can get this message out and prevent false flag operations. That's what I try to do now at 21stCenturyWire.com, because the new American Revolution has begun. It's a Cold War. It's a spiritual war. It's a war on our health, our families, our minds. We are in the InfoWar, all of us.
And it won't be televised. There you go, Dean.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. There's Dean. Hey, big round of applause. Dean Ryan. Adam. Okay, now you're a warrior. And by the way,
Can I just jump in?
Dino, yeah.
I have a
I'm
request.
going to talk to you. I just said. Come on in. Go on.
Can we just do another round of introductions?
Another one? You want me to read some more? Okay, your pinatas fight back.
Actually, I think that wouldn't be a bad idea, because I'm curious what some of these other people do, but go ahead if you want
were you
to do
paying
that.
attention when I actually read the introductions?
No,
they
but
wrote
there
it
were
right here. It's
so
on
many
the page.
jokes, they might have missed the point. But go ahead.
Well,
So,
you
Adam.
presented joining the military as if it was something that I would list on my resume, like something I was proud of. And I just want to make clear
You wrote that you've joined the military right here in your resume with your picture next to it. It says, I joined the military when I was 17. I presume you wrote this, sir.
No.
Did you?
No.
The Congressional Committee.
No.
So
I
Adam,
just want to point out that it's taken me a while to realize this, but joining the military is either an act of ignorance, cowardice, or greed. There's no way around that, and I've taken that understanding into a lot of my activism.
why is that? Explain that statement.
Explain that? Ignorance, because people who join for good reasons are ignorant of the fact that joining the military doesn't help anyone except the war profiteers, the bankers, and the politicians.
Amen. Yeah.
Greed, because a lot of people in the Marine Corps actually come in saying, I joined to get my teeth fixed.
Or tooth, as the case may be. Yes.
And cowardice, because, first of all, joining the military is not even in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in America. More troops die in car accidents than in combat, even at the height of all recent combat operations. And when you know there's a big threat and a little threat, and you say, I'm going to be really brave by going after the little threat and doing whatever the big threat tells me to do, that's cowardly.
Yeah.
When you understand that the most beautiful part of the human experience is being an entrepreneur of your own happiness and taking charge of your destiny, saying, I'm going to aim higher, I'm going to be all I can be by following orders and being a cog in a machine, that's cowardice.
So, Adam, can I ask you a question then?
Sure.
All right, my question is, there's been a lot of controversy over the movie American Sniper. And the controversy being the fact that here you had a guy who had 160 kills. There's a lot of propaganda about, because he was in the process of divorcing his wife and hiding money, and now his wife is like, oh, I loved him so much. But at the same time, he then decided he hated killing so much, he came back to America and started, in essence, a group of mercenaries, which was called Craft, yes? And these Craft mercenaries were then implicated with backpacks and hats and the whole things in the Boston bombing as well. But before they could actually nail down that thread, a crazy guy on a gun range then blows off American Sniper's head. Do you have any opinions on American Sniper and that whole thing, or him in the military-industrial complex then coming here and opening a group of mercenaries?
Well, I've done some videos about this, and I've been very fortunate that they've been picked up by people in the media who are reposting them, and I'm going to be on CNN with Dr. Drew on Monday, so I'm really excited that this conversation is happening as a result of this movie, and it's really inspired a lot of people to challenge American militarism. But I don't really care about Chris Kyle as an individual. You know, let's look at what he is being used for. Let's look at what he was always a part of here, you know. And it's not just the line about the war, and it should be no surprise that people who supported a war based on lies, hey, their hero is going to be a big liar. And I don't just mean about Jesse Ventura or about how he said he was shooting looters in Hurricane Katrina or he killed two carjackers in Texas. I mean, all those details are really irrelevant. But I want to connect this instead to the bigger issue of war itself being a lie. Hillary Clinton. Oh, yeah, we got shot at when we were running on down the tarmac in Bosnia. Oh, my gosh, I'm so tough. You know, like, oh, okay, Miss Clinton, sure. And then you have Brian Williams. Brian Williams, most trusted man in America, the great anchor of the nightly news that everybody follows. It defines the country's narrative on a daily basis. But you know what he just exposed in himself? Is that he's really the anchor for a narrow fantasy land. And it's a place where most Americans live because it's what keeps this government racket going. And if they didn't keep you living in this fantasy world where the government can do no wrong and the troops are brave and the cops are there to serve and protect, then the whole racket would start to fall apart. And Chris Kyle is just one element of that narrative. And I'm actually really encouraged by this. And if I may comment a little bit on the bigger picture that's been touched on here today, this conversation, the conversation around American Sniper, is really encouraging because it's starting to get to the heart of the issue. Now, a lot of people are debating, was Chris Kyle a hero or not? Who cares? I mean, the concept of heroism or idolizing people is a dangerous one to begin with, but it's a distraction. Even if you go to an anti-war protest, and a lot of people say, well, that's good, we're stopping war. And I started with Iraq Veterans Against the War with my activism when I got out of the military. And of all the activism, when you can stop people from being killed, I think that's the most valuable. But even then, if you're protesting the war and not the militarism, and you're saying, this war is wrong, we have no justification, but you're not saying, gee, maybe we shouldn't have a standing army. Maybe we shouldn't live under this government racket. Maybe the idea of government, to govern, to control by force, and all these other things that we talk about are symptoms of this fundamental disease in humanity of statism, that we turn to government and we expect that somehow magically government can make things that are immoral moral. Things that I would never be allowed to do as an individual. If they call it taxes, stealing is okay. If they call it war, then, you know, invasion and wide-scale murder is somehow righteous and glorious. And even the talk about all the things that people on this panel have mentioned as very legitimate things to be afraid of, it's reasons to be afraid. And a lot of these are really distractions. You want to talk about propaganda, you know, we're emotionally manipulated by governments. I think everybody listening today knows that. But do we emotionally manipulate ourselves the same way? If government is saying, you know, hey, we're good and righteous and you should just watch football and not pay attention, and then you say, no, we should pay attention to all the bad things government is doing, you're missing the third way here, which is to build the future that we all want to see possible, of a free, voluntary, harmonious society based on respect for individual rights and the non-aggression principle, and respect for just basic human rights, decency, and embracing a deeper understanding of ethics and morality. And we don't have to think of this as, and I just want to say one more thing, that I disagree with the concept that we're coming to a crossroads. That's kind of fear-based. Doesn't it sound like, if you don't grab your pitchforks now and overthrow this system, the world's going to hell and it's going to be 1984 and totalitarian government and boot stamping humanity's face for the whatever. 1,000 years. No. This is, you step back one more step and you see that what we are a part of is a beautiful evolutionary spiritual process of humanity ascending and achieving a state of greater harmony. And when you can embrace that in your daily lives, that's how you find a greater level of satisfaction. That's how you really find your soul as an activist. And that's how you get to, not have to, get to be a part of this beautiful process.
Adam Kokesh, ladies and gentlemen. Yay, bravo.
So what do you do with the guy that's breaking into your house at night?
You tell him Jim Mars lives there. All right, Sean Stone. Actually, I
can I answer that?
I'll
tell you. I'll answer that. I'll tell you.
Ask questions later.
You raise him in a world where he is educated about his own love for himself. You educate him in all the ways that he can find happiness peacefully and voluntarily, and you take out this idea that somehow because you feel like something immoral can be justified, you do it.
That's what I'm going to do with the guys in my basement. Obviously. That's what I'm supposed to do. Sean Stone. Okay, go ahead. Finish your sentence.
It's not a simple process, but the idea of saying that because people are bad, Therefore, we need to give certain people arbitrary power to do immoral things and call them government. Like, that's not going to attract people. That's not an answer. That's not an argument.
Okay. Now, this gentleman, I want to ask a very deep question of. First off, it's been such an honor for he and I to become friends over the course of the last year or so. First off, we both share the most awesome name ever given to a human being ever.
I was actually named after you. You forgot that in my introduction.
Actually was. And I say this all the time. Again, I think that having friends or having even a friend is the most remarkable miracle that the universe can give us. And I always, when I'm talking to Stoney on the phone, I'm always saying, dude, you know what it's like to talk to human beings? You know what it's like to talk to actual people out there? Do you understand how hard it is for people like us to know what's going on, to actually have a normal conversation with people at Starbucks? And so, and one of the great things about Sean and I working together on some other things and just becoming friends over this is just his depth of knowledge of seeing the patterns and the warp and weave and the strum and drang and the ebb and flow of all of this. So my question for you, Sean, is when I remember you and I were at a party or soiree or whatever up in Brentwood or one of those weird mystical
Hollywood
hills
orgy.
up there. What was that again?
Hollywood orgy.
Yeah.
Illuminati party.
Thanks, Adam. Give me an invitation to wherever you go. Obviously, I'm being left out somewhere. I was wondering about that case of lube behind the corner. Anyway. So, Stone, here's my question. You and I had a conversation back then because you were looking at everything that was going on in the media. You were looking at the movies and the names of things like the Noah epic and Dark Knight and all of this. What do you think, with all the things that are coming out in the media now, which I think is interesting, there's a bunch of time travel movies coming out. There's Project Almanac, there's Hot Tub Time Machine 2. But where do you think movies and the media, what do you think they're preparing us for? You have a great grasp of that sort of thing in the media. Do you think they're preparing us for something, a war, a conflict, martial law, EMPs? You know, when Walking Dead is the #1 show on the TV, it's, I begin to wonder a little bit about that.
Zombies for sure.
Yeah,
coming.
zombies.
It's interesting.
All I can say in the zombie apocalypse, dress like a clown because they'll think you taste funny. So there we go.
No, I just suggest you eat the zombies.
Yeah, there we go.
It's how you immunize yourself against them. It's a very interesting thing when you start to look.
Pull the mic in.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me? It's very interesting when you start to look at the symbolism of the films and TV shows that are put forth and how they reflect, I would say almost dimensionally, many of these things that we're discussing because, I'm an investigator, and so for me, when I hear people like our panelists speaking, I want to ask more and say, well, what are these entities, these alien beings that we're speaking of? What is really happening on this planet? Because we're talking about much more than a three-dimensional physical phenomenon. We're not just sprung up, in a Darwinian sense. I don't believe from monkeys, and happen to be in this place in time by accident. I believe that there is a much greater consciousness at work, a manifold consciousness, and that oftentimes you can see in cinema, and for example, what Sean was referring to, the time travel stuff occurring now, also been mentioned, like why are things revealed at a certain point? At what point does HARP become revealed and then become sort of a hot topic within the subculture, and then more and more people become aware of it? And how does that then change our overall consciousness collectively as human beings? And if you know magic at all, you understand that magic, which many of the Illuminati and the sorcerers and people have been practicing for thousands and thousands of years, deals with the unconscious mind. What symbols and words and vibrations affect us on an unconscious level that then give manifestation in our physical reality. So you take, for example, the fact that the time travel stuff coming out in film format a little bit more and more. For example, Back to the Future. Back to the Future was set in '85, but the sequel to it was 2015. So maybe the fact that it was 2015 hints at why this particular year is important for it, also because the first Back to the Future has all kinds of references to 9/11. If you actually have ever looked into it, there's 9/11 on the clock when basically if you turn the clock at 1:16 when Marty enters the Twin Pines Mall, the clock is 1:16 a.m. You invert that, it's 9:11 a.m. He arrives at Twin Pines Mall. There's a terrorist attack on Doc Brown. Doc is killed by terrorists. When Marty goes back into the past and gets back to the future, it's now called One Pine Mall. Okay.
And by Libyan terrorists as well. And
Well.
who's the most dangerous state in the Middle East now?
They look a
Libya?
little bit like Muhammad Atta. So the point being that that was the first film. There are also a couple other numerology, including when the actual car goes back in time, and that famous shot when the car dissolves in 1955 and it goes into flames. There's actually a 9 on the building, so it's 9 and then 1 with the flames. So if the first film has some metaphor for 9/11, the second film also has metaphor for 9/11. If you ever catch the scene where Marty goes to his parents, to his future self in the second film in 2015, and the World Trade Center is on the TV screen, and it's dissolving upwards, but seen from the point of view of the father who's hanging upside down in the hanged man position of tarot symbolism. If it's seen from his point of view, you actually would see the towers coming down in the second film. So why do I say all this about the World Trade Center? I believe we got put into a certain kind of time loop in 2001. Basically, the ritual of the collapsing of the towers was a ritual that trapped us into a 12-year cycle that we have been stuck in of complete totalitarianism. And the film 12 Years a Slave was actually referring to us because it came out in 2013 and saying 12 years, going back to 2001, 9/11, you have been enslaved by this. 2013 basically was the end of that cycle. 2014 is the 1-year transition period because all things of 13 is a transition number. So the 12-year cycle basically was the period of complete enmeshment of us mentally, psychically, into their trap. The 13th year was 2014. 2015 is now we're starting to break out of it. Knowledge is starting to come forth. Time is beginning to move again. We are starting to basically break this Saturnian trap. So the time travel films are indicative of that because they're helping us to understand the true nature of time, which is that it's not linear, and actually things occur, beyond nonlinear, but in a form that basically does indicate some sort of time travel. I would say even based on our own consciousness, because many of our thoughts and ideas we don't know where they come from. We can speculate that they could also come from our future selves or from future intelligence. So in terms of looking at 2015 as that, I would say time is beginning again. The other indicator of that film-wise was the film Boyhood, which also, again, I watch films and you can start to pay attention for yourself. You see the number 33 pop up all the time, including in the film Boyhood. The main character's name is Mason. There's a whole sequence, in fact, when Mason goes to the park with his dad, and first they show the monarch butterfly. The next shot shows 33 on the kid's sweater. The next shot, the dad is showing his son how to do the pyramid when he catches the football. It's like three scenes in a row that are very indicative of symbolism. So if you're catching it, you're saying, okay, the director has a certain awareness, and obviously this director has also done films with 33 pyramid in it with his Through a Scanner Darkly film and whatnot.
Talking about Art Linklater, right?
Linklater.
Right.
So in this film, Boyhood, basically he was telling us it took 14 years to make this film. It took from 2001 he started making it. And when I saw him speak, he said, the interesting thing about this movie is that in making this movie over 13 years, because it was finished in 2014, it took 13 years, nothing changed in this country. You look at it in 2001 to 2013, the cars don't look any different, the clothing, the mentality. The only thing that's changed is the iPhones. Like in the 80s, you could see the difference. You watch a movie in the 80s, in the 90s, you could see a marked difference. In the 70s, you could see a difference. We were stuck in a time loop for the last 13 years now. And I think it's finally coming to an end. So the thing about film is it's very much indicative of certain patterns and almost a dimensional awareness and knowledge. And just to point out, like what Sean was mentioning particularly, is just to explain to you how this works. The zombie thing, for example. Take Game of Thrones, which is one of the most popular shows on TV.
Which I think is also the symbol for the Conscious Life Expo. Doesn't that look like Game of Thrones on there?
Well, what caught my interest was the fact that, Game of Thrones came out 2010, I believe, 2011. And the major theme of that show, obviously, is a struggle for power, of control, of sitting on the Iron Throne. And in the process, you have a lot of decapitations taking place, right? Now, what are we seeing en masse is the ISIS decapitations. You saw bodies being burned in Game of Thrones. That's what you see in ISIS. Not to say that the creators of Game of Thrones were creating ISIS, but to say that there's something psychologically taking place, that when you see a poster for Noah coming out in 2013, I believe, or 2014, the poster for Noah, simultaneous with a poster for Game of Thrones with a three-eyed raven, right? The Illuminati all-seeing eye in the middle. And the theme of Game of Thrones was all men must die. And the theme of Noah is all men must die. And by what? In Noah, it's death by water. Now, when Noah came to the end of the reign, how did he find out about land? He sent the raven, actually, if you know the old story. He sent the raven out because the raven didn't come back because he was so busy feeding on the dead bodies. So when you have a poster for Noah simultaneous with the poster of the raven of Game of Thrones, both saying all men must die, and also Game of Thrones saying winter is coming. What is winter? Winter is water, ice, right? There is something symbolically being put forth in an alchemical sense of we are being basically put under first by water, and then you get the MH17 370 missing in the water. Or whatnot.
So what's your conclusion?
The conclusion is nothing. It's the conclusion to simply say to become more aware and awake to what is being put forth to us, to understand that there's a consciousness at work here, and it's affecting us on an unconscious level. And that's the most important thing, is to first and foremost just recognize it. Recognize that we are in a magical reality. And ideally, you become more and more aware of your unconscious. You become the master of your own mind. And then you are less able to be manipulated by those who are making these games for us. Because that's what it really is a game that we are basically pawns. Or if we choose to be pawns, we'll be pawns. If we choose to become masters, then we can ultimately, ideally, affect and change the game.
And that's why this man should be running the entertainment business. Sean Stone, ladies and gentlemen, Sean Stone. Brilliant, brilliant man. Okay, everybody's had kind of a chance to jump into the fray, so to speak. Since I'm doing this for free, let me do one commercial here. I have some books actually at the table in the back. My lovely wife Melissa's back there with our friend Noreen. This book, Black Seraph, which we have a film about, is all about a Vatican spy working underground in the terror networks, dealing with genetic weapons. This book I wrote in 2009 describes everything that's happening today with ISIS and the collapse of all the Arab nations, and about the rise of the third great Antichrist predicted by Nostradamus, and what the Vatican does about it. Also, these books here, part 1 and 2, Sands of Time. This was the journals of a man who spent 40 years in the shadow government. It's part 1 and part 2. It's the true story of what happened behind the scenes at Area 51 on the Montauk Project, with time travel, with the Dulce Archuleta Mesa Wars, everything up until about the year 1998, 1999 or so. True story, fantastic books. They've got 5-star ratings on Amazon, across the board, big bestsellers. So, yes. Yeah, we'll give you guys books. Anybody that hasn't read the book, you guys we'll give them to you. Okay, let's open it up to questions. Questions. Actually, there was one gentleman right there in the...
Okay, just a second, Sean, because you didn't
Thank
ask
you.
me a question yet.
I haven't? Okay.
No.
Sorry? Okay.
You seem to have overlooked that. Not sure why. I don't think it's a plot, but I'll volunteer.
Wow. I've been the victim of a conspiracy. Okay, well, Carrie, all right. You want to say something, Carrie?
Yeah, well, actually, I want to say a few things.
All right, now just for the record, she jumped in on the question at the end. Yes, on chemtrails? Yes? She jumped in and expressed her
I
opinion
jumped in on the
expressed her
chemtrail
opinion on
question. I don't recall that. Do you guys recall that?
Carrie doesn't
Okay.
remember that she talked. So, just so you know.
Did I say something about chemtrails? I don't recall it.
You did, actually. I know
Actually,
about
what I want to say here
Malaysian
is
Airlines flight.
I have information about HARP. They may be trying to distract you
Carrie,
by
can you tell us about HARP?
HARP over ground, because actually what I found out recently from Mark Richards, who's in prison. He's part of the Secret Space program. For those of you who don't know, and he's on my website, I've interviewed him now 3 times in Vacaville prison, and he says there is actually a much larger construction under any HARP array, and there are many HARP arrays, including in Russia and other countries of the world, and undersea, and that there are pyramids that are built underneath them that actually contribute to the power that goes out via that array, and that's doesn't seem to be very widely known. Explosion on Mars. It wasn't an explosion on Mars. It was a hit. It was a hit. In other words, it was a targeted hit on to Mars, not coming from Mars, or not exploding on Mars. And
Wait, you want to explain that?
That was, again, Mark Richards' information. That's all I have about it, so it's not a lot of detail.
Okay.
But just wanted to sort of reverse that way of looking at it. In other words, everyone takes for granted the explosion happened on Mars rather than it was a hit that created an explosion on Mars, if you can see the reverse.
Okay. JPL said that they found a pocket of methane gas, and that methane gas exploded, and it was in a crater, and so there was a
Yeah, no, it was
volcanic
much
explosion
deeper
actually
than that. Actually, it had a
on
lot
Mars.
more to do with the ET wars that are going on, you know, the human ET wars that are going on right now. And like it or not, war has been part of all of the various races that have been inhabiting this multiverse for quite some time. And I'm as anti-war as the next one, but I do think you have to realize that we are in the midst of a war for hearts and minds, and that it is a war between light and dark on the planet and off. And it is important not to close your eyes to that. So I do believe we need to build a new world, and I applaud any efforts in that regard. Let me see, there was something else. Oh, well, Sean Stone was talking about a loop. You know, and one of the problems, of course, with panels is that we don't get actually a discussion going. All you get is one question and one answer. That's not really very stimulating, in my opinion. I think that it should be a little bit more, you know, interactive. But it's a difficult format. I'm not criticizing you, Sean, because you didn't invent the format, obviously. Panel discussions. No, panel discussions are very difficult to handle. I'm saying that I just think that the format of a panel discussion makes it difficult, so I apologize for the audience. But want to say here that actually I think what has gone on since you know, the towers went down in 2001 is actually an awakening. And I know that Project Camelot has been spearheading this awakening you know, along with many other individuals. So I wouldn't want to sort of be short-sighted about the awakening around the planet that has really jump-started since and beyond 2001, and so that we have people that have been so awake and aware over the last 10 years, and it's just actually it's cumulative at this point. It's an incredible awakening revolution happening on the planet. And I just want to encourage you and make you realize that regardless of whatever, you know, so-called Illuminati magic, and I have studied all the same occult symbolism, Sean, as you, but that's what they were trying to put down. It doesn't mean they succeeded, because as a matter of fact, the innovation and incredible awakening, as I say, that has happened around the planet is responsible, very likely, for making this an ascension planet. And so you can thank yourselves for being among those who are here now and are among those who will be awakening, have been awakening, others are in your midst. So I actually wanted to say a few of those things.
You know?
Okay. Are you done? Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't want to incur your wrath again. So you okay? Everything
Sean,
happy
can
now?
I
No
incur-
wrath.
Go ahead. Hold on. Dino, go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Sean, I will incur the. Oh,
Stand by 1 second. Dean first, and then we'll jump
I
over
just
you.
want
Go ahead.
to let people know we have a 21st Century Wire table in the back with Patrick Henningsen from RT. If you stand up, we have some great coffee mugs. Kent, you know, that's over here. And I also want to give a shout out to one of the greatest esoteric teachers in my lifetime, Mr. Jordan Maxwell, who's joined us
Shut
today.
up! Jordan!
Thank you, Jordan. Please raise your hand.
Hey!
Hey, Jordan.
God bless you. Anyways, proceed.
Ben Davidson, what do you want to say? Jump
First of
in.
all, I had no idea.
Like I said, I've broken up quite a few fights on panels, so it's dove in between quite a few people.
First of all, I had no idea Jordan Maxwell was back there. That's awesome.
Hey, Jordan, what's up, buddy?
That was
I'm sorry.
really cool. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about earlier. The Illuminati. Are you guys really afraid of a group that Dan Brown successfully shred in a best-selling novel, and then Tom Hanks did the exact same thing on the big screen twice? Who here in the audience or up on this panel knows the difference between the Illuminati and the Order of the Illuminati? If you do not, you probably should not be speaking on the topic. In terms of HARP, there is only one HARP. It is in Gakona, Alaska. It was not our friend. There are plenty of other high-frequency auroral heaters. However, in order to keep the opposition to geoengineering out of the mainstream, in order to make all of us seem insane, seem crazy, so that nobody will listen to us, they point us all towards one word or one concept or one idea, and they focus us there such that anytime there's a strange cloud in the sky or there's a strange storm or something that happens that we don't expect to happen, we blame it on HARP. Anytime there is a they, a them, who is they? Who is them? Does anybody know who they or them is? I mean, we all have this idea that there's something going on.
Have you seen any Camelot videos?
What?
Have you seen my videos? If you're asking that question.
I've seen quite a few of your videos. Have I
Okay,
looked
well,
at every
then you should have the answer. Ask
then
Jordan Maxwell can
Finish your
tell
thought.
you.
Finish your thought. Go ahead.
The point is that we tend to get everything that is considered a conspiracy and every single theory placed on every single person that is within that realm of thinking. So if I'm a conspiracy theorist, every single conspiracy theory that is out there is being put on me by the people in the mainstream. So if it doesn't matter if I have all the evidence in the world, or if Sean has all the evidence in the world for something. You take 10 completely baseless and lunatic conspiracies, and that is what the mainstream sees of us. One of the things I was hoping for, and I'm really glad that we had a call for an actual back and forth discussion, is because if not for the fact that there is so much clouding going on of these topics, if not for the fact that we, by definition, allow our minds to be open and go everywhere, we would already be being taken seriously. You made the comment at the start that, well, okay, who is it that's ignoring us? It's those 6 main media companies. I've been on the news plenty of times. I've gotten professors, people at NASA to listen to me, to write papers with me, and it's not like I'm towing the mainstream. The difference is, and where you have to go with this, is if you are going to challenge these mainstream ideas and bring into the light this world, this matrix that has been hidden from us. And I'm not saying that these conspiracies don't exist. I'm not saying there's not a they. I'm saying that there needs to be somewhat of a corralling, somewhat of a logic that is placed on all of this so that we don't dovetail out of control and we don't venture into speculation, and we give things proper names, and we recognize when everything is pointing us towards the word HARP, when most of their weather modification and things that affect the human body are in low frequency, or, LARF, or they're using satellites. The idea that high frequency, the idea that HARP could actually blast me while I'm sitting right here is nonsensical, especially the ionospheric heaters, which point straight up and have a...
So what's your conclusion? Your conclusion for
The conclusion is that there needs to be what she described. There needs to be this back and forth. There needs to be argument, because otherwise we are all just saying what our open minds are allowing us to say. And just having the open mind isn't enough. You have to wake up once, and then you have to wake up again and put a harness on it to some extent. Okay. Otherwise, we're all going down.
Hang on, Adam, and then Laura. Wait, Adam, you want to have something to say?
Just a quick response I'd like to give to try to put this in perspective in terms of where we devote our time and our energy and our attention, and what our actions really represent in our values and how we prioritize. And I feel like I could try to embarrass a lot of people in the room and do a little show of hands game and say, how many of you know about theories about ancient aliens and are familiar with that? How many of you know about HARP? How many of you know about 9/11 and have researched the various conspiracies and all the detail about the events of that day? How many of you know about the Illuminati versus the Order of the Illuminati? How many of you know about the New World Order? And then we could do another round of show of hands of how many of you know how to grow your own food? How many of you know how to talk to cops? How many of you know how to talk to yourself in a healthy, positive way? How many of you know how to meditate, how to be happy, how to talk to your kids and keep them from enlisting, how to talk to the people around you about the things you care about, and how to join this process of moving humanity forward rather than being diverted by the personal, inward, emotional manipulation that we impose on ourselves of wanting to recognize that fear, to feed that demon. And I would just say redirecting our attention and thinking about these questions, thinking about what we actually devote the time to be familiar with really says a lot about our values. And if we consider our values in terms of where we devote our time and attention, I think a lot of these issues stop mattering.
Laura, go ahead.
I think the healthiest perspective we should have about this whole us and them thing is to understand that, Order of the Illuminati, shadow government, whatever, is happening behind the scenes that is, creating the world that we see in front of us, we have to understand that the us and them mentalities doesn't really serve us, because the them is the negative ego, and we feed into it and we enable it all the time, and that's something we don't have to do. We feed parasites all the time, and we don't have to do that. So to separate it from ourselves and to say it's outside of us or even an ET race just makes it much harder to heal and to integrate into the self, because if it's a war on light and dark, we have to take both and we have to merge them together and create some alchemy here instead of riding one side or the other. We've all, worn many hats over many lifetimes, and so the negative ego is the them, but it's the us, and we have to notice, where we're enabling. Also, the number 13 is coming on tap. If you notice, there's a 13th sign in the zodiac. We need to pay attention to the 13th moon calendar. The Melchizedek has been the hosting race for the organic ascension timeline for the last 26,000 years or so, and now the 13th mother arc is coming online, and that has to do with the goddess energy, and it's not a figure, it's the feminine within men and women connecting with Gaia and the regenerative power of nature so that we can bust down all these negative technologies, and we totally have the power to do it. But why the 13 families? Why do they get that name or number? And why isn't there a 13th elevator? So anyway, things to think about.
13th floor. Laura Eisenhower, there you go.
Oh,
Yay!
right, sorry.
And by the way, she is absolutely correct. Ever since the year 2000, with the precession of the equinoxes, there's been a 13th sign in the zodiac, which is called Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus is actually the foot of a naked man with his back to you, actually wrestling a serpent or a python, which some people, by the way, say is not a single serpent, but is actually two snakes or two serpents, which represents the DNA helix, and that Ophiuchus could also represent the energy of Merlin, actually inundating everything. And so those of you, have my Scorpios in here? Where are my Scorpios at? You got Scorpios? Look at these people, most likely to die of autoerotic asphyxiation. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, right here, Scorpios.
Oh my God.
Just tie yourself up, spank yourself on the ass, and say you're happy. But Scorpios, by the way, Scorpios have changed, because Scorpios are no longer the irascible, angry arachnids. They are now actually the phoenixes that are rising from the ashes. The color of Scorpio, which used to be red and black, which are the sex, death, and money colors, is now actually purifying violet. So you've all basically been, since what we call the harmonic concordance in 2003, the two signs that changed. Where are my Geminis? Geminis. Thank you for paying attention this long, by the way, and not talking. God, I can't believe you shut up for an hour and a half. Geminis have changed into the Stargate. Scorpios have changed into, so they're not just the twins yakking at each other. They now represent the two pillars of the mysteries of Solomon that are now speaking universal truth. It's another reason why you Geminis, your stone is shifted from emerald up to moldavite, which is a stone that represents the energy and power of the center of the universe. And you Scorpios, which are Phoenix, Ophiuchus is now between approximately November 17th and about December 6th or so. And that's the toe that's actually dipping into the zodiac of the 13th sign. So just a little bit of detail for you. Okay, once again, all you shy people, now I promised that gentleman there with the glasses. Yes, sir, your first question, you raise your hand first. Stand up, tell me the question. Hold on a second. I'll just repeat the question. It's much easier that way. Please, and make it, instead of a comment, which is a comment, question, monologue, et cetera, if you want to soliloquize, take a Shakespeare class. So question of the panel. Regarding shapeshifters, I'll just repeat it it's okay. Regarding shapeshifters, yes? Okay, so what's your question? About shapeshifters? Okay. So you saw somebody shapeshift in person. It wasn't just watching Obama on the television. Come on, he's a reptile, So what's your question for the panel? Is there something else over and above controlling the Illuminati? Well, and let me just make two quick comments, and maybe I think this would be a perfect question for Carrie, but she's really shy. I don't know if you want to answer this question or not. Let me just comment again. The Bible, if you look at Genesis 6, the sons of God came down from the sky, daughters of men that they were fair, took to a wife, and their sons and daughters became the kings and queens, which is the government, and and mighty men, which is the military of old. So it talks about it. The Bible talks about an extraterrestrial matrix of this, and I've actually spoken to some big time guys on the inside who say you shouldn't be asking whether or not ETs are working with the government, but whether or not ETs are the government. So, Carrie, why don't you take that since you're our expert reptilian shapeshifter?
I mean, I think that Sean Stone is also qualified to answer the question.
Thank you. I was going to talk to him next. But go ahead.
Good. But as far as who's controlling the Illuminati, first of all, it's a mixture of many secret groups. So, and they're controlled by probably more than one race of ETs in essence. Some of them are absolute Satanists, and so they bow to whatever they're calling him, currently. Anyway, there's definitely a reptilian race, and actually there's two major ones that are adversaries for dominion over the planet Earth. And as far as the rest of it, it's very likely there's an Anunnaki bloodline that's a human Anunnaki bloodline, as well as, or it looks like, let me say, humanoid Anunnaki bloodline, as well as another part of that, which is a Syrian Anunnaki, which is a reptilian hybrid race. And there are other races behind the scene too. Aldebaran, for example, is got a big vote in there. They're the Illuminazis that Sean likes to refer to, because not all Illuminati are Nazis necessarily. But so it gets very involved. They're like any group. You can't just say a blanket statement about the whole thing.
Okay. Anybody else want to take this question?
And you need to be more specific. But go ahead, Sean.
Sean, Laura, anybody?
Yeah, but they're basically not behind the Illuminati, in theory.
Okay, reading Behold the Pale Horse once again. Is this a question? He mentioned when he's in the Navy. Physically saw somebody morph. Yeah, I've seen the story. Anybody else want to comment on this or throw it out to the next question?
Yeah, let me say this.
Go ahead, Jim.
All right, because this gets back to what he said quite correctly, that we don't want to go too far out. And okay, what I know and what I feel, what I believe is not always reflected in my books. When I write books, as a journalist, I only write things that can at least be attributed, if not well documented. Now, you get to the thing about the reptilians. When I first heard of that, and I guess when I met David Icke, and he's talking about the Queen Mother of England is actually a 200-year-old reptilian cannibal. I go, gee,
Well, she's shaped like an accordion. She stands at 9 feet tall.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't think I'm going to win friends and influence people by getting up publicly and claiming that. So my point is, there's a lot of things I know that I don't write about because I can't prove it. And the reptilian shapeshifters is one of them. And I've heard this story, but I tell you, personally, I have had more than a half dozen experiences. And I'm only talking to you guys because we're here at this Conscious Life Expo. I would not tell this to a general audience because they'll just roll their eyes and say, this guy's nuts. Because that's what I thought early on until I had about half a dozen or more people come to me with these incredible stories. One was the daughter of a very powerful Texas politician who saw her father change into a reptilian shape. Another one was a woman in East Texas who gave me a lot of inside information because her best friend, she saw her shift. And her best friend said, I'm so sorry and I can't be your friend anymore because now you saw me as I really am. And I know one of the questions is going to be, well, how many of these people are around? And that was the question she asked her friend, her shifting friend. And the friend said, not very many. Okay, well, of course, not very many. Does that mean not very many in East Texas? or not very many in Texas? Or not very many in the United States? Who knows? But there are too many stories like that. And then, without giving names, I called up a really good friend of mine who happens to be a very, very well-known figure, writer to you folks, who deals in, really strange things. And I said, you're the only person I could probably talk to about this that wouldn't think I'm absolutely nuts. I said, but what do you know about these people who claim that they can shapeshift into reptilian form? And he blew me away by saying, "Oh, I know about that. It happened to me." And I said, "What?" And he says he gets up one morning and he's kind of in that state, not quite asleep, not quite awake. And he goes in, looks in the mirror in the bathroom, and there's this alligator-looking face looking back at him. And it freaked him out. And he said all he could think about was, how do I get back? And then, as typical human condition, you know, if it doesn't kill you, you start getting used to it. And he relaxed. He relaxed a little bit, and he went back into this human form. Now,
So
do I know this
the
happens?
conclusion
No,
is-
but I'm telling you, there are too many people that say this is going on, and so therefore we have to withhold judgment on people who tell us these stories.
There you go. There you go.
I would just pose and say, how do you know you're not looking at shapeshifters right now? Because we don't, but the point is we're not material bodies. And that's the essential science of it, I think, just goes down to that. We know that how many atoms actually physically compose us. You boiled us down, we'd be like smaller than a core of an apple. You know, like we really physically are nothing, right? So we're vibrating atoms.
Well,
right?
and American
which are
Indians do
mostly atoms.
skinwalking,
So
and they change all the time.
what are we? You're just seeing with your eyes?
One thing,
Quick. Okay, go ahead, Laura. Go ahead.
the DNA connected to like the 13 families is like a mixture of reptilian and Orifim consciousness, and the Orifim consciousness is actually a very high level consciousness. And so the reason there's trauma-based mind control is because a certain faction of the reptilians want to keep them in a state of being easily possessed because they have a reptilian, you know, DNA aspect to them. And so when they stimulate it through trauma-based mind control, which is multi-generational, they're able to possess those bodies and actually shift. But what I'm feeling is that it's not really the queen anymore. It's like she's gone someplace else, and a lot of these people are being possessed, and it's due to trauma and their ability to keep it locked into a certain level and keep them from reaching a higher level. There was actually a rebellion because originally they were supposed to help to heal the negative lines, and the rebellion in connection to that is what brought about the Nephilim reversal grid, which has been put under Stonehenge. So I would encourage people to Google it because it's keeping it very difficult for the masculine and feminine to come together, and it's been around for a really long time. So next time you argue with your mate, you know, just cut each other some slack, because there's some really dark technologies that are affecting the grids in our DNA that have to do with keeping that split. So it takes extra effort.
There you go. 3 quick comments on this, just briefly, to give you an idea where the reptilian mythology, or whatever you want to call it, comes from. If you look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, the downward path of the descent of man begins the fall of man when that downward path on the north side directly aligns with the North Star, which is also known as Thuban in the constellation of Alpha Draconis. In the Egyptian mythology, it was Isis and Osiris and Horus and Isis, who were the gods of light, who were always at war with the serpent gods of Set or Seth or Sutek. Hence, you have the mythology about the serpent in the garden that split the brain, if you will, between the right side and the left side, the masculine and the feminine. Also, I lived in a monastery in Nepal, and the black hat monks there absolutely believed that there was a race of evolved or evolving reptilians that they called the Nagasarachi that lived in a series of underground velts, specifically underneath the Gobi Desert and the Himalayas, what they called Akarta Major and Akarta Minor. One last thing, a good friend of mine from years ago who was an extraterrestrial contactee named Audrienne, who was riding on the ships and taking photographs and all kinds of stuff. We did stories on him when I worked for Strange Universe back in the 90s. But he said that Earth is in a contested area of space, that you have the Palladian Empire on the one side, which is assisting the mammalian evolution on the surface, and you have the Alpha Draconian Empire on the other side that is assisting the reptilian evolution when the dinosaurs 65 million years ago went underground. And that if you look at the very last part of the Bible, you will notice that there's a great war in space between the dragon and the Archangel Michael. Michael is wounded, the dragon is cast onto the ground, and there's a great war on land. And when you read books like Sands of Time, for example, talks about, or talk to people like Al Bielek or Preston Nichols or all these people, they're giving you the same story that the Bible basically talks about. Okay, all right, who's been waiting the longest here? Okay, you. I promised you beforehand that I'd give you a question, yes. Actually, you and then you. Okay, so stand up, please. Yes, your question? I'll just repeat your question. You can sit. So Sean Stone, how does the symbolism get into the movies? Are the filmmakers part of the conspiracy? A movie like Boyhood was very enlightened. and the messages are very enlightened. So who puts
I'm not saying
who puts them there?
that the symbolism
Pull the mic
is all evil.
Sean,
it's
pull
it's
the
like
mic in.
people who say Masons are all evil. It's not the case. I'm simply referring to a universal mind that is working through people. And that is really what this is about. It's about our consciousness. And so, yes, there are certain dark filmmakers who definitely have a more satanic energy that you can feel coming through their movies, and then you can feel a more ascended, energy, as enlightening energy coming through other films. Doesn't mean that you won't see symbolism in both, because it's not. I mean, a film like Natural Born Killers has monarch symbolism in it. Doesn't mean my father knew consciously what monarch programming was. Do you understand?
But he did co-write the script with Quentin Tarantino, who knows all about that, right?
I don't know if Quentin Tarantino does.
Yeah, he co-wrote the script.
No, I said I don't know if Quentin Tarantino knows about monarch mind control. I don't.
Yes, question, right behind. Yes, go ahead. Yes. Okay, actually, we kind of have to wrap things up, so that might be a good question because we've got about 10 minutes or so. Everybody wanted to actually, Carrie, why don't you start with that? We have a half an hour? Okay. Okay, all right, never mind. All right, anybody want to answer that question? Adam, go ahead, answer the question.
Well, I thought, I'd be happy to hear other panelists' opinion on this as well.
Of course.
But for me, what I discovered in my own journey as an activist is that when you wake up to the nature of government or the world around you or whatever it is that you think you are waking up to, the first reaction is almost always negative. And I feel like there are a lot of people, especially in this room right now, who are in that stage of their activism where you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, I'm angry, and I'm frustrated, and I'm afraid, and I'm depressed even. I mean, do people feel that when talking about these subjects, when they start learning what's really behind the curtain, right?
It kind of makes you powerless. It makes you feel
Yeah, you
powerless.
feel helpless,
what can I do?
right? And then you go out on the street corner and you say, now join me in my fear and my anger and my depression. And everybody goes, fuck you. I'm going back to watching Dancing with the Stars. So if you really are a truth seeker, you know that the truth is liberating. You know that it's going to make your life better. And I think the first answer is to get in touch with that for yourself. Is what you're doing improving your life? You are choosing to do it, so at least you think it is on some level, but really consider that against your values, and then find a way that you can take that improvement to get you past that stage of your activism, to get the kind of emotional and mental freedom that allows you to take the truth and instead be frustrated and angry and depressed, to be happy and free and in control of your own mind and say, look, I live better because of this understanding. I'm happier. I'm healthier. I have better relationships. I'm moving through life with a sense of purpose. And when you can do that, when you have something that you know is of value to other people in a way that's made your life better, not a way that's made you satisfy your fears, but in a way that's really allowed you to engage in a more positive way with the universe, share that.
Okay, next up, anybody else? Come on. Anybody else? Laura, go ahead. Well done. Well done. Laura, take it.
I think we have to kind of give back the opposite of what they throw at us. Whatever intention they have with certain things, we have to sort of do the reverse. So when I look at the sky, I let myself feel empowered. I'm like, oh, obviously they're doing this because they know how powerful we are. And instead of having it bring me down, I allow it to be an opportunity to boost my energy. And basically, my goal is to turn all the weapons they throw at us into something that we sort of dismantle, because basically we don't allow it to work. And we just keep our energy high, because really we have to understand this is an illusion, and a lot of it is to capture our mind, and you have to, buy into the bait first, like a mouse with a trap. And a lot of that's in the media, it's in the distortions of the masculine and feminine, and once you buy into those programmings, then your energy is at a certain level that it cannot transmute and work out the chemtrails and all these different toxins. But as we move up in our dimensional vibration during these times, we absolutely can handle it, because the vibration that we're in is much higher than those technologies and what they're doing. And so I'm creating little missions, well, big missions, personally myself, to go to our local police departments, and I'm writing up some things with information about what Hillary Clinton's been doing, and people that should not be running for office, and I'm petitioning them. Because basically these are the faces of people who should be on America's Most Wanted. So I'm petitioning the police, and I'm basically befriending them and asking them from a place of mutual respect that, you know, we're concerned citizens, and we know that, you know, they have signed up for this sort of job to be of service, and I give you that respect, and I want to be treated with respect. And if we're going to be in unity consciousness, I'm not into the protesting. I'm into let's all, you know, talk about this. And so I'm making a bunch of meetings with sheriffs and cops, and I'm setting people in different states to go to their local police department to give them a piece of paper so that they can sit and look at those links. And maybe 1 out of 5 will help us, but at least it leaves a paper trail that we're looking to work with the police department and not create this us against them and this battle, because we keep the duality alive. So that's what I'm going to do.
Laura Eisenhower, there you go. Okay, questions?
Okay,
And
actually,
one other-
Sean, I would like to say something about that.
Please.
You know, actually, what I would suggest is, first of all, find your mission. And that's the most important thing. So once you kind of grok that and understand what it is and who you are and why you came here to begin with, because you're all here, you all have very unique gifts to add to this whole that we're a part of, unity consciousness or whatever you want to call it. And so find those gifts and then bring them into realization. Don't hide your light, shine it. And if you have a truth, you know, once you really feel solid in your truth, and through meditation you can connect yourself with your higher self, etc., then after that, I think that you need to speak your truth, and you need to speak it whenever and wherever it's presented. Because what we have at present are a lot of people that hide themselves, they hide their light, they're very unsure of themselves. So among those other things that you can do is, of course, educate yourself. And, you know, really do that seriously. Prepare as you would for battle, because ultimately this is a battle. It's a spiritual battle, and you're a warrior in a spiritual battle. And so your mission is vitally important to all of us. We are stronger because you are strong.
Amen. There you go. And remember, just be friendly. Meet people in an expo like this. If you look at what the Conscious Life Expo has done, and then the Whole Life Expo before that, it's given you alternative lifestyles, alternative health, alternative remedies. I mean, I still remember growing up in the fundamentalist Christian house I had, where yoga was the devil's exercise, and the downward facing dog, the devil will climb up your behind and use you as a meat puppet for his purpose for the Illuminati. Brothers and sisters, so meet people, be nice, shake hands. Brothers and sisters, I would, if we were in church right now, I'd make you turn to everybody and shake hands and say, you know, and God be with you, and also with you, and all that. So one of the things, just a quick plug. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, when I do my lecture and sort of wrap this whole thing up, I show you how to do exactly what Laura is saying, which is go to peace with all these entities and say, I am the naked inhabitant, I am here to help the widows and orphans, I am here to heal the wounded in war, and how can I engage in a monetary system that is based on debt and interest banking, which is forbidden by God and harms those around us and all future generations. You have to give me a monetary solution to that. And judges lose their minds when you do this. And I show people how to use the bond process to be able to write off mortgages, student loans, credit cards, and all these successes that we've had in helping people fight the government using all the tools that they've already given you. Now, way over there on the other side of the room, over there, yes, that lady just put her hand up, just right there. Yes, we're wiggly fingers lady. There you go. Yes, and I will repeat your question. Make it a question, quick. Okay, I keep trying to find a question in there. So what's the question? Okay, speak on sovereignty as the birth of the new divine human. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd be happy to. I think it's fundamental to humanity moving forward right now.
Briefly, because we're running out of time. So
recognizing the divinity of the individual and that sovereignty is respect for how we relate to each other. And a lot of people take this back to the way that people have traditionally spoken about libertarian philosophy as a matter of leaving me alone or fighting back or that kind of political conflict, when really it's about getting to that recognition of the individual, and it's about connectedness, because when you respect the sovereignty of every individual, it means that relationships are voluntary, they're free of force and coercion. And I understand what you said about the Akashic record being something that is imprinted in all of us from everything we do and all of our experiences. And I think as we live that, when you embrace that and you open your mind, you open your heart to really considering that, then you can change the way you relate to yourself and relate to others. And sovereignty is just one way of describing that has a lot of political implications, but it really is something a lot more spiritual, communal, and essential to connectedness than that.
And also, if I can jump in there real quickly, being a constitutional expert on this, they've divided everything into a public and a private, and there's nothing really public anymore. Everything's been privatized. The courts are now businesses. Government is now a business. All of them have Dun and Bradstreet numbers. And so what they've done is they've taken the human being, the vessel of the Creator, under the republic as the living man or woman, and that law is about 4,532 pages of the U.S. Constitution. And they've substituted you with a hologram in the matrix, a straw man, if you will, a fake tin man, a text identification number man, if you will. And what that person does is that hologram in the matrix now comes under what they call the U.S. Code. And the United States Code is 22 feet high, has millions of words. They can change it every single day, and that's what they nail you of. I understand what you're talking about, but the sovereignty of actual spirituality, of being an angel in your own body all the time, as opposed to politically, whatever. Anyway, yes. Question, yes, sir. Question, yes. 15 minutes. Thank you. Hey, buy those people stuff. They know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I've got to take this one first.
Become more a Dear Abby session rather than conspiracy. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this will be the last thing I say because I got a workshop up there at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
The reason why I stood and applauded when Adam spoke a little bit ago was because he described what I call your first wake up, where you're just so excited you can't believe you found this world of amazing stuff just basically hidden right in front of your face. And then as the icing on the cake, they've lied about a lot of it. When you step into that world, there's a little piece of you that sort of recognizes that part of everything I've ever known or believed has to come into question. That is what allows you to have that logical filter drop and allows you to let any idea in as plausible. I don't know how you go about making that second awakening. For me, it's what I was trained to do, due diligence. That's what I made a living in before I did this. I don't know how you make that transition, and apart from going out and seeking the facts, are people citing their sources? Do they sound credible? Things like that. It is really a journey that, if you've just woken up, you can't wake up again just like that. It's a very difficult process, and it takes one that requires questioning yourself and doing quite a bit of homework. But so, yeah, anyway, for those who are wondering why I stood and applauded Adam a few minutes ago, that's why I did.
And once again, Ben Davidson is the director of the Mobile Observatory Project, founder of the Suspicious Observers, and he's got a workshop at 4 o'clock. So thanks, Ben. And the reason I put these esteemed people together of all my friends is that, again, there's a spider at the middle of all of this. And there's a web that I'm sure you've become cognizant of. And no matter where you tweak that web, whether or not it's JFK or 9/11 or TWA Flight 800 or Malaysia 370 or Obama's birth certificate or wherever you tweak that web, it always leads back to the main spider at the center. And sometimes we get confused with the trivia of the web and not understanding that there does seem to be an angelic war. I mean, Ephesians did talk about you fight not against flesh and blood, but against princes and principalities, not of this world. Or as Shelley once said, "Arise, ye lions, with the morning dew. Fear not, for you are many and they are few." So that's my comment.
Sean,
right,
can I add
course,
to that?
Steve, go
Because
ahead.
I know I've been speaking too much tonight.
Please.
And I just want to
You're
say,
shy. I got it. You're shy.
we as the alternative media and all of you who've been supporting us, we are winning. MSNBC only averages 50,000 views per day.
Which stands for mostly saying nothing but crap. MSNBC.
Fixed news is failing, and people like Adam and Sean can release a video and get 50,000 views in 1 week. And the great work that everyone on this panel has been doing. So we are winning as the alternative media. All of us in this room are winning as the alternative media. All of you who make your own podcasts and all the people behind that make that possible, we are winning. We are beating the corporate, lying, fascist, demonic, Illuminati media. The multi-ethnic destruction in America is coming to an end. So I applaud all of you.
Amen. There we go. Amen. And again, he's absolutely right. When Project Camelot has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, when my radio show, Strange Universe Radio, goes out to, and actually we can count them on the computer now, but we have a daily audience, Monday through Friday, of 1.6 million people worldwide. That's getting to people out there. And my internet program is the only show on TalkStream Live in the top 5 with Dennis Miller, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck. I mean, I'm up there with those people talking the truth every day. So strangeuniverseradio.com. It's on freedomslips.com or revolutionradio.rocks. Yes, way in the back. Yes, sir, in the black shirt. Yes, sir. Michael Hastings, the death of Michael Hastings, okay? Yeah. And also Paul Walker's death as well, but there's been a lot of suspicious deaths in the media recently. Anyone want to comment on that? It seemed pretty clear that his car was being controlled. And
can I answer that?
Yes,
can I
please,
answer
go
that? I was at InfoWars at the time Michael Hastings died, and we had a team of my colleagues and investigators that were going to go down to Hollywood to investigate the crash. And we were about to board the plane, and the wife of Michael Hastings made the call to Alex and she said, please don't come. There's nothing to see here. I don't want any involvement in this. So it was shut down by Michael Hastings' wife, and then she went on, Piers Morgan, and went along with the official story, and all these weird anomalies happened. So it was very suspicious when that happened. I was being there at that time.
I would just add.
Go ahead.
I was going to add really briefly that if you look at Buzzsaw, we've done an interview with Scott Bennett. I know Kerry Cassidy at Project Camelot also interviewed Scott Bennett, and he talks about some of the issues that Hastings was getting into regarding this Brad Birkenfeld, who was a UBS whistleblower, and a lot of the financing of terrorism that's going on by our friends, in the Saudi family and, their sponsors like the Bushes and whatnot. So Hastings apparently was getting into some of this stuff, and you can learn more by checking out the Buzzsaw or the Project Camelot interview with Scott Bennett.
Yes, ma'am. Question.
That's right.
Forgive student loans, yes. Yes, easier. We just wrote off a court case in Canada, actually, because the bonds we do here in California are authenticated by Los Angeles County. They're apostilled by the Secretary of State of California, and you can actually do the bond for Canada, for North America. It's got a big, pretty gold seal on it. But essentially, because we're all under the crown still, and that's all under the Vatican, which is a whole other big story. But you have to understand the entire thing. The reason the Vatican gets involved is because everything has been set up as a trust. It's been set up as a trust so that everything is in trust for the return of Christ. Look, whether you believe it or not, it's what they believe. And the Corporation of the United States of America, you can look it up. Don't trust me. Look it up on manta.com. Look up the Dun & Bradstreet number of the corporate government of the United States of America, and you will find that the chief financial officer is Archbishop Derek R. McLeod from the Washington, D.C. Archdiocese on Michigan and 4th. I've tried to get him on my radio show a bunch of times, but he's basically the CFO of the government, of the corporate government as the United States of America. Everything is set up as a trust, but what they do when you're born is with your birth certificate. They take you from being the beneficiary with them as the trustee, and they flip you so that now you are the trustee and they are the beneficiary. And the way they do this is with the birth certificate, because they make your mother sign in a box that says informant, which basically is a legal term which means you are challenging the parentage of your father, making you a bastard, and bastards have no inheritable blood, according to Judaic code and biblical law. The whole thing switches it around, so they put you in the stillborn column, they kill you, they orphanize you, they kill your dad, the state then steps in under parens patriae as your father, and now you become the slave, basically working for them, the masters, rather than the other way around, how it's supposed to be, which is the government as a public trust. And all civil servants, first off, none of them are very civil and none of them are very servile, but their civil servants are supposed to be in service of you. When was the last time that happened? So this is why I show people this is what happened with a birth certificate, but what you can do with your Social Security number and with the offset bond number on the back of your Social Security card, which is printed on all money, by the way. If you take a Federal Reserve note out, you'll notice that an offset bond number is on every single Federal Reserve note bill. That actually gives you the ability to set off, settle, and discharge debt because there is no gold and silver under Article 1, Section 10. Therefore, no court or no agency can actually demand a public exaction in a privately printed irredeemable promissory note. And what we call U.S. dollars or Federal Reserve notes are privately printed by the Federal Reserve. They are not redeemable in gold and silver, and they're promised to pay at some point in the future. And therefore, the bond process allows you to write off debt. And student loans are just stupid because you can't bankrupt out of them. And if you borrow money to put your kids through school and you retire, they can now take your entire Social Security fund away to actually pay off your student loan. So the only way to do it, and we've written off half a dozen student loans for anywhere from $50,000 to almost $250,000 is with the bond process. All right, next, and I'm going to talk all about this tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So if you guys really want to know how to get free, okay, now we got to wrap this up because we've got, how much time we have left? 5 minutes? We have 5 minutes. Okay, let me just do this.
Can we do closing comments?
We got to do closing comments. Okay, don't run the panel. Sir, okay, do you have a quick question for a specific person? Go. Yes. Okay.
Shadow operations, you mean my pilot? Yeah.
Okay, question is, first off, hold on, Sean, what happened in conspiracy theory?
That's a very quick answer. True TV had a license for it. They did a 3-year run. They didn't want to extend it. They killed it. That was it.
Show got canceled. Carrie, what happened to the other show? Quickly.
Okay, Project Camelot did a pilot for a series, and it's called Shadow Operations. It's available on the internet, and it's on the internet. They put it on the shelf after they shot it. They fired our director, fired the producer during the shoot, but ultimately got made with some of our whistleblowers. It's very important, so you should see it. They basically shelved it during the shoot. One of the people got a call placed on behalf of the CIA from Gordon Nevelle.
What did it do?
And Gordon Nevelle basically said that the CIA people offered our producer sort of an offer he should not refuse. He refused the offer. And if they could run the show, then we would get a series, and obviously that's not what happened.
Okay, Carrie, give everybody your parting shot, your final,
Okay,
in a minute or less, what do people right now most need to know? In a minute or less. Go.
Okay, I think you should go to Project Camelot, projectcamelotportal.com, projectcamelot.org, and they go to the same place. I am about to put together Project Camelot TV, which is going to bring together all the best hosts out there so that you can have a place where they're all together and they're actually going to make money. We have an investor. It's looking very good, so that's what's going on with Project Camelot, but please do follow my front page if you want to know what's hot and what's very important to know.
Amazing, the stupendous Carrie Cassidy, ladies and gentlemen. Carrie Cassidy, the Lois Lane of the internet, which is why Superman always has to save her. Adam Kokesh, what do people most need to know?
The biggest conspiracy is not hidden at all. It is right in front of all of us. It is something that we all participate in and tacitly endorse with our daily actions. And it is the concept of government. It is the racket of statism. It is the global paradigm of it being okay to do immoral things if you have enough people behind you, or a fancy hat, or a shiny badge, or a nicely written law behind you. And you don't have to spend a lot of time in fear or in research to resist this, to free yourself, and to allow this understanding to make your life better. And when you can do that, if your activism is something that makes your life better and you can share that with people, that's a beautiful thing. That's what I've made my mission as an activist, and I'd be honored if anybody here would check out my website, thefreedomline.com. I have a free book there, and I've got stickers. I'll be at the 21stcentury.com wire table, 21stcenturywire.com table right after this, and I got a table upstairs. Thank you very much.
Adam Kokesh, ladies and gentlemen. Go, Dean. Dean Ryan, what do people most need to know?
I came here to chew bubble gum and defeat the New World Order, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
All right, Dean Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, right there. Stone Cold Sean Stone.
I mean, so many angles to approach. I mean, that's what we do at Buzzsaw, and I would just urge you to check out the show. It's really a great resource of tools because ultimately the, people talk about what conspiracy to follow. Look, just look at the patterns. When you study history, when you start to understand the pattern of behavior, you don't have to get caught up in every news story and understanding, oh, this is a conspiracy and breaking it down. Just recognize, no, we understand that the people in power are liars. We understand the Federal Reserve is the private bank that issues the money that we are using. We understand that there are great conspiracies at work here. So once we start to see the pattern, recognize it, that already enlightens us and raises our consciousness and vibration, and hopefully will allow us to connect with others of like minds, and that's really the beginning of the revolution. It's mental.
There it is, the amazing Sean Stone. And now the reason Waldo is hiding, Jim Mars.
We have a workshop tomorrow, too. I'm sorry. Just want to plug that at 2 o'clock tomorrow if anyone wants to come to the workshop.
Again, the only
Sean's
man who can
workshop.
photobomb himself, Jim Mars.
Hey. Let me tell you right now, each and every one of you can be as free as you're willing to put up with the consequences. You want to be totally free, put on sackcloth, ashes, go up and live in a cave in the mountains, okay? Of course, an IRS agent and a preacher will be up there before long, but you can be free. But you have to become aware. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is admitting there's a problem. And I think most everybody here is already admitting there's the problem. So now use that God-given computer in your head, called your brain, and look around. They were talking about the alternative media. Adam, I'm just finishing up a new book, and there's a whole section on the media. And I'm here to tell you, the so-called alternative media is now the mainstream media.
Yay!
Isn't that right? There's more people watching that than watching that. So anyway, think for yourself and be free.
The amazing Jim Mars, and she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. Bring us home, Laura Eisenhower.
So we have to understand that the most powerful energy right now is unity, consciousness, us all uniting, and the prerequisite to that is to fully know ourselves, to be self-aware, to do the inner work, to check ourselves for things like implants, and to see where we carry fractures, where entities might be attached to us, because once we do all that, nothing can get in, nothing can control us, and we're joining together as an army of light, and we starve the governments, and they have nothing except for wondering what the hell happened.
Laura Eisenhower, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, let me just wrap this up by saying once again, the Maya had a saying. Each great civilization has a saying. The Egyptians were as above, so below, as within, so without. The Greeks were know thyself. And the Maya said, all is one, life has purpose, God is love. That means we are biologically connected to each other, we're chemically connected to the earth, and we're atomically connected to everything in the universe around us. That if life has purpose, then that means no matter how many low kicks, dirty tricks, or rotten licks you've taken, you're in the exact right point in time and space to be the hero you need to be. And if God truly is love, then it means the prima mobile of the universe is for the greatest and highest good for everybody in that universe. Get the greatest books ever written, Sands of Time. It's a strange universe. And we just work here where it doesn't kill you, makes you strangers. StrangeUniverseRadio.com. See you Monday. Thanks. Like you.